Morning, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting of the Scrutiny Commission. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. For those not able to watch live, the webcast will be recorded and made available for viewing on the County Council website after the meeting. I've received apologies from Dr. Hill, Mr. Boehm, Mr. Bulls, and I've just been informed Mr. Innes is running late but should be joining us soon. And before we begin, can I please remind everyone to turn on their microphones when they wish to speak or are invited to speak. So item 1 is appointment of chairman. So the commission is asked to note that I've been appointed chairman of the Scrutiny Commission in accordance with Article 6.05 of the County Council's Constitution. Item 2, the appointment of the deputy chairman. The commission is asked to note that Mr. Mullaney has been appointed deputy chairman in accordance with Standing Order 29 of the County Council's Constitution. Item 3, minutes. So I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of April 2026 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. On to item 4. So these are the minutes of the special meeting of the Commission held on the 11th of May 2026. I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. All agreed? Thank you. Item 5, question time. I've not received any questions from the public. Item 6, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I've not received any such questions. Item 7, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Item 8, declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members wish to declare any interest? I probably need to declare under the traded service ones because Bow Manor Hall sits in my division, so I will declare under that. Any other declarations of interest? Thank you. Item 9, declarations of the party whip in accordance with the overview and scrutiny procedure rule 16. Do any members wish to declare the party whip? No. On to item 10, the presentation of petitions under Standing Order 36. I have not received any petitions. Before we begin, I wish to propose the change of order of the agenda and take item 13, the update on the delivery of the Council's customer experience strategy, after we've considered the MTFS outturn. Is that agreed to alter the agenda? Yeah, thank you. Okay, on to item 11. So the provisional revenue and capital outturn 2025-26. These are on pages 21 to 72. Simone Hines, Assistant Director of Corporate Resources, will take us through the report along with the Director, Declan Keegan. We also have the lead member for Resources, Mr. Fowler. So good morning, welcome, Mr. Fowler. So Simone, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Morning, everybody. Congratulations, Madam Chairman and Mr. Vice Chairman, for the reappointment. When it comes to the provisional outturn report, I think it's a genuine good news story. I was happy to present it at Cabinet last time round. Having an underspend is always a good thing because it gives us a bit of headroom. And I think it demonstrates good financial stewardship, and we've had a lot of things go our way. But we've also managed to tackle things with the right frame of mind, and we've been pretty good with that. So yeah, there's not a lot more to say other than what I've said at Cabinet before. So yeah, I'll hand over to Simone.
Thank you. So this report presents the provisional revenue and capital outturn for the 25-26 financial year. So it is a backward-looking report. And as Mr. Fowler's just mentioned, Cabinet did consider it at its meeting last week. So firstly, in terms of the revenue outturn, that is an underspend of 7 million. But there is a lot of under and overspend sort of within that position. Firstly, we do have continued pressures in children's social care and SEND, which we've talked about at the committee for some time now. And both of those are demand-led services, as you're aware. But that has been offset by underspends across most of the services, actually. And those underspends have been driven by a range of different factors. So we've got some areas of increased income. We have got some areas where they have managed demand really well in other areas of social care. There has been some staff turnover, and actually we've also done some early delivery of savings that were in the MTFS in future years. Also to note, when the budget was set in February 2025, we did include use of reserves of 4.6 million in terms of needing that to balance the budget, but that underspend of 7 million has been achieved without use of that reserve, so just for the committee to be aware of that. And just touching back on SEND and sort of children's for a moment, we do have that kind of continuing rise in demand for SEND services, and that has had a significant impact in year. We have got a £35 million overspend on the high needs block. That has actually reduced from earlier on in the year. I think we were forecasting above 40 million at one point during 25-26, but that kind of just underlines the kind of the national and the local challenge that we've got in this area, which has been fairly well publicised. But there are some signs that some of those trends are maybe improving slightly, which is why the overspend has reduced over the last couple of months. That said, the cumulative deficit, so the total deficit as at the end of March this year, stands at 99 million, so just a shade under 100 million, and that it is that level of deficit that government have announced some substantial support towards in terms of that high needs stability grant. Now, that is subject to certain conditions, one of which being a SEND reform plan being approved, and also a calculation methodology that we think is going to be based on the net deficit, which is actually lower, but the report does go into that in a little bit of detail. The grant is not expected to be paid until the autumn, subject to those conditions all being met. So until that point, the council will continue to cash flow that deficit. And as I said, there are some conditions we've got to meet and a quite complicated calculation methodology. So we are expecting that, although the grant has been pitched at 90%, that there'll actually be quite a substantial shortfall that the council will still need to fund it itself. That said, there is quite a lot more information in the report that covers what we know so far about that grant. Just moving on then, we have central and corporate budgets have also made quite a significant contribution to that overall underspend position. We do have an underspend on inflation contingency, as we've seen the impact of inflation reduce as the year's gone on. That may be reversing more recently, but for most of last year it was reducing. And we've had higher investment income as well, as interest rates have stayed higher for longer. You've got a range of appendices as part of the report. Appendix A just gives a summary of that outturn position, and then Appendix B goes through all of the detailed variances for each of the directorates, which I won't go into in any more detail. The report then sets out a proposed use of that underspend, that 7 million, which is focused on a number of sort of strategic and service-related priorities. So firstly, there is 2.5 million to be put towards capital financing and debt repayment. So we will look to identify further opportunities for debt repayment, and then that 2.5 million can go towards any one-off costs of doing that. 2.5 million for a highways investment fund to provide some additional financial support for any priority schemes. And then the remaining 2 million to support the implementation of the transformation programme, or the Better Leicestershire programme, just recognising that delivery of some of those initiatives is likely to require some upfront costs. Then, alongside the revenue position, the report also updates the committee on the capital outturn for the year. It shows that we've had expenditure of 140 million on capital during 25-26, and then 65 million of spend that's been rephased into future years, and that's just to reflect slightly different timing of scheme delivery. So that spend will still need to be incurred, it's just slightly different timing. You've got quite a bit of detail in the report from paragraph 106, but just in brief, in terms of that rephasing, one of the main reasons was some of those major kind of road projects that the council was delivering, MMDR being one of them, and that was just around timing of final contractor payments just falling into the new year. But as you'll be aware now, the road is now open. There were some slippage in vehicle replacements, so that the orders have been placed, the delivery hasn't quite kind of made it before the end of the year. So again, the timing of payments has just fallen into the new year. And then there are a range of school projects that also have had some rephasing, and I think that's largely due to planning issues and planning taking slightly longer than originally anticipated. So there's quite a lot of detail on the capital programme in the report as well. But just to summarise really and conclude, I think you'll see from the report that does demonstrate the council's continued to maintain good financial management during the year, despite some significant demand-led pressures, particularly in children's. And we've generated underspends elsewhere that have more than offset that. And the proposed use of the underspend that I've just mentioned has been sort of framed in such a way that it will help some longer-term sort of financial and service benefits as well. That's all I was going to mention. I'm obviously happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Simone. Mr. Piper.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Simone, for the report. I have a number of questions. So I'm going to suggest that maybe if I take them in a couple of batches rather than give you them all at once, if that's all right with you, Chair. Thank you. So I've read on paragraph 24 on page 25. I really didn't understand what that was actually saying. It's only a short paragraph, but it just doesn't seem to read.
In terms of the DSG deficit paragraph?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the DSG is our Dedicated Schools grant. That contains a number of blocks of funding that are aimed at specific purposes. So we have the schools block, which is the funding to fund the revenue costs of schools each year. There's an early years block, which funds our kind of early years nursery provision. And then there is the high needs or SEND block. It is the high need SEND block that has the significant deficit that stands at 99 million at the end of the year. But there are underspends or cumulative underspends on those other blocks. So both the schools and the early years block of funding actually have underspends on. The methodology for calculating the 90% grant, which is the support towards the SEND deficit, although it is support towards the SEND deficit, the calculation methodology is going to use the net deficit. So whilst we've got a £99 million deficit just on SEND, we've got underspends across the other two, which reduce that to a net deficit of 79. And we believe the government calculation methodology is going to use the 79 million, the lower figure, to calculate the 90% rather than the 99 million, which obviously will reduce the level of grant that we get. Does that help?
That makes it much clearer. Thank you.
Just on that, just a point of context, the reason that we're concerned about that is because we can't move money between the blocks. So government are reducing the support for high needs, but we've got no ability to say, okay, early years and schools, we're going to take that bit of money off you to contribute to the high needs. So on one hand, what looks like a sort of a rational thing to do, offsetting overs and underspends, it's not actually, because we don't have that ability to sort of redirect that funding towards high needs. Hence, that's why the point's been made.
Yeah, thank you very much. Right, paragraph 32, page 26. It says that unregistered accommodation for children is more expensive. I would have thought that was counterintuitive. I would have thought you would have paid more for registered accommodation because of the fact that they are registered and have gone through all the hoops and loops to get registered. Paragraph 43, page 29, it talks about an annual fee, but I didn't quite understand what the annual fee was of. Paragraph 47, page 30, the clawback shortfall of 0.9, is that completely lost or is it retrievable? And I think I'm going to pause there if you
Okay, I'll work backwards. In terms of paragraph 47, that 0.9 is just a shortfall. So as part of the budget, we kind of set a target for clawback of unspent funds. That's just referring to the fact we didn't quite meet the target during the year. Doesn't mean we can't still try and make that clawback in subsequent years. It's just we didn't meet the budget target. Yeah. So the point before that, I missed the paragraph reference. Sorry.
It's just the annual fees that we charge for contribution to care.
Oh, so it's in terms of that uplift. Sorry, I missed the question. Yeah.
The annual, I think the question was around what's the annual fee for? It's basically if anybody who comes to care, they get assessed for two things. One, do their care needs meet a threshold that we provide support, and that's kind of set out in the Care Act. But we also do a financial assessment to see whether they sort of have the financial means to pay for that care themselves or just contribute a portion towards it. All that annual fee is obviously as each year goes past, for example, there'll be an annual uplift in pensions. We'll reassess people's contributions, and then they may kind of contribute more to their care just on that basis that the care costs more.
Great, thank you very much.
There was one more you asked.
in terms of the cost of unregistered placements, I think as it says at paragraph 32, they are used when there's no other option available. And I think the issue there is often around kind of the supply and demand issues and the type of care that is needed in those types of placements. It kind of drives up the cost.
Shall I add a bit of context? Because obviously this was my bag before. When we're having to use unregistered, obviously there's not carers available as there would be in a registered provider. So you end up paying individual carers for sort of 24-hour care because it's an unregistered provider. So the substance of care is not there. So that's why it costs more.
Thank you, Chair. That does make it much more transparent. Going on, repeated underspend because of recruitment issues. That's mentioned a number of times through the report. But if they are being replaced by temporary or contract staff, surely they're more expensive. So that it would put the cost of employment up, not down. That was one thing. Paragraph 93, page 37. They talk about two insurances, 12.2 million and 4.9 million, but the total on the target on the title says 17.2. I wonder if the maths is right there. Shall I stop there and come back with the last two in a minute?
In terms of recruitment issues first, so you're quite right. There have been a range of I think savings in relation to staff turnover and recruitment gaps. In some areas that will lead to more costs if we do choose that it's a role that we need to have in place, and therefore we have to have agency cover, and can't stand any of that kind of vacancy at any point. So if it's agency cover, quite often there are additional costs, although of course with agency you don't pay things like sickness and holiday, so sometimes that can balance out. Agency is only one option for sort of vacancy cover, though. In some places, if it's just a short-term vacancy, we may just sort of manage for a very short term without it. We could look at options around honorariums and overtime, for instance, as well, which are much less cost. So there are a number of options that we can look at for covering vacancies, some of which will cost more, some will cost less. And then in terms of paragraph 93, I think those paragraphs are just picking out the biggest balances under each category. I don't think they cover every single reserve that's under that heading. I think it's just to pick out the main ones to give committee an idea of what the most significant balances are within each category. That probably explains the slight difference.
Yes, and if I may continue, I wondered if it was that or a rounding issue, because you've only gone to one decimal place in every case. So on 99, page 38, I didn't understand what the pan-regional transport model was. Maybe I was asleep at that day when I was at school. And on page 41, the SEND programme. This is the SEND building at Husbands Bosworth, and it says there have been delays on land, but I thought the county council owned it, so I don't understand what the delays would be on property we already own. And the last point there was, and I don't have a reference for it, but Dorothy Goodman School. We talk about spending 0.3 million on that. Do we own it, or are we subsidising them? I thought it was a privately owned school, but again, I may be wrong on that one. And that, you'll be pleased to know, was the end of my list. Thank you.
Right, in terms of the SEND school on page 41, it is council land, but there are still a number of steps we need to go through as part of any large-scale construction project around site investigation and planning, for instance, and I think that is perhaps taking longer than anticipated. In terms of Dorothy Goodman, I'm not aware whether that's a council. I think it's a private school, but I'm not 100% sure. We can maybe clarify and come back to you on that. And then the pan-regional transport model, Unless Declan can help me out there, I'm also not sure what that one is. We can come back to the committee with some further information.
I can't give you much detail, but we do obviously sort of have a transport model as it says to kind of sort of when sort of doing sort of road schemes to make sure they kind of sort of understand the impact of traffic flows, and we do sell that kind of modelling, particularly places like Leicester City, to save them having to sort of create their own. So the income, all it's basically saying is the income that come in, we accrue up in a reserve, and then when we need to do the refresh of the main model, there's funds there to do it. It's kind of, so it's a bit of a kind of just a sort of a replacement fund.
Great, thank you very much indeed.
Just on the schools, I think the Dorothy Goodman is a council-owned one, but we can't run our own school, so we have an academy to run it, is what I think from memory. But we'll get that back to you, yeah, because we don't run schools ourselves, yeah.
It just seemed to me strange that I thought it was a privately owned one, but we were paying for maintenance on it, and that just raised a question mark. Thank you.
Double check, but just going back into my memory, I think it's a council.
Madam Chair, if I could just quickly come in on the Husbands Boswell School thing, just to give a bit of transparency for members. One of the issues with the site clearance, because it's in my ward, so division, so I know about it. One of the problems we've actually had is there was a lot of like fly tipping in the area. So, and it embedded itself in the ground over time. It's over years and years and years. So it caused a lot of problem with the site clearance. And that was just one issue. There was quite a few site clearance issues there. So I think that's contributed to quite a bit of the delay.
That might coincide with a rumour I heard about it being owned by a farmer who was allowing the fly tipping on it. But that was a rumour I heard, and I hear lots of rumours, even in your district.
We're dealing facts here, not rumours. Mr. King.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, very disappointed to see that the leader's not here today. I mean, that's I was looking forward to that. Mr. Harrison's not here, so to go run through his budget. Apart from it wasn't his budget, it was our budget. So because we set that one like this one last year, so very pleasing to see that you said earlier, Mr. Fowler, that your strong financial management. Oh, that's great to hear that what we put in place last year has been delivered. But one of the things I wanted to raise, and not sure quite who, perhaps it's you, Mr. Fowler, because it's more of a political question. At the last meeting we had, the Special Scrutiny Commission, what is clear from the efficiency plan or service redesigns plan that you've got, a lot of the efficiencies, redesign, savings, etc., are very reliant on demand in resource intense services either flatlining or decreasing. And what's clear from the report today, the outturn report, is actually in most of those areas demand has continued to increase. In some areas it's accelerated. It hasn't performed as people have expected. So what that raises with me is what I said at the last Scrutiny Commission meeting, is a lot of it's a very high risk approach that's been taken, because you're relying on this service demand reduction in adult social care, children's services, and all those sort of things. And actually, you've got no ability to really control that, which is what the outturn report really shows. So I'm just wondering, how this is going to be, and obviously we're not here to talk about the efficiency plan today, but the issue I've got is that for months and months and months, and in fact before the election last year, your group went round saying how easy it would be to find all these savings and how easy it would be to cut council tax. Oh, you haven't cut council tax, you've increased it. And almost like there was a secret cupboard full of easy savings waiting to be discovered. And I'm just thinking the reality is somewhat different. And you've now got redesign, still got an ongoing structural budget gap, MTFS of 84 million. And so, to me, the cupboard appears quite empty. And so I'm just wondering, given what we've seen in this outturn report of, demand hasn't fallen away. I mean, okay, it's variable, but it's not controllable. And I think, this is immediately related to the previous meeting we had a few 11th of May, when we looked at the efficiency, because actually a lot of that efficiency redesign program is reliant on reducing demand and not on actually any real savings. It's all about that. So I'm kind of, yeah, I haven't really got anything else to say about this. I mean, it's a positive in that there was an outturn that was below budget, but the one thing I do think is in highways, I mean, what was it, 5.9 million or something of efficiency, but actually you've then gone and, so instead of reinvesting all of that into highways to help deliver much needed road schemes, etc., you've kind of hived off some of that money to other areas. And I get that, but on the other hand, there's a lot of stuff out there that needs doing. And just to pick up Mr. Piper's point about the Husbands Bosworth site, I was very surprised to read that also, that there was delays with land at the county council only last week in the consultation that it issued and held in Husbands Bosworth. Made the fact that it said it owned the land and it wasn't a big problem, and now we find out in this report actually there is a problem. And the other issue which you haven't touched on, and I understand why, is also why is there still a slow motion delay, slow action on the Lutterworth East Strategic Development Area, 2,750 homes. I'll just have to slip in, Chair, that I'm now Deputy Leader of Harper District Council, so as the planning authority. But the point is, this is a huge area that's got has got consent, full consent, and yet here we are, we're just dragging our feet over it. Residents in our county, in the district, they need homes, we need new workspaces, we need new infrastructure resources. We've got a scheme, it's consented, and yet we're on a go slow with actually getting it delivered out. And I'm just don't understand what the problem is and why we're not, all full ahead and, get on with it, basically. So, Chair, I'm just wondering if we can get some answers to these questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to say that, Madam Chair. I think there was a question somewhere embedded in that. To take them one by one, I mean, as you say, this isn't about the efficiency review directly, but I take your point that it's partly related. But I disagree with your insinuation that the efficiency review relies on natural flatlining of demand, because it doesn't. There's a difference between initiatives within the efficiency review, which are directly designed to reduce the pressures of demand. So you mentioned in adult social care, we have our prevention initiatives, which are designed to keep people in provisions that don't cost as much money while still give them a high quality of care. That is a demand reduction in itself, in the sense that it's meant to relieve pressure. But what you're looking at here is a natural increase in cost pressures. We can't affect that overnight. The efficiency review isn't an on-off switch. So we shouldn't conflate natural demand with initiatives which are designed to reduce the pressures in the long term. So that's one thing. And as a sidebar to that as well, the same is true with children's services. The whole point of us building schools, using our land, using perhaps ILP funds and things like that, is to be able to reduce the ransom that we're held to in terms of high secure provisions, high needs facilities. At the moment, we have very little to be able to use, so we have to pay whatever is asked of us, even if it's going out the county. But if we can build it within the county, naturally that increases supply and reduces cost. So, but that's a long-term thing. It's not just because the efficiency review has been passed by cabinet doesn't mean that its effects are felt overnight. As well as I, Mr. King, that it takes time for things like that to go through. On Lutterworth East specifically, I share your keenness to get Lutterworth East going, because it is a county asset. It's LCC owns it. It provides us capital receipt eventually, but it's a complicated process. We've got a twofold development there. We've got B8s to the south of the road. We've got that going to cabinet in a couple of weeks, so that is getting moving. But one relies upon the other. So to get the houses moving, because there has to be a huge spine road that goes through it, obviously the council has limited highways resources as it is to actually be able to spend on that kind of thing. We need to be able to have this B8 development site come through to be able to fund those future infrastructure projects that are going to support the housing. So whilst I completely share your enthusiasm, again, if you've got a magic wand, then I'd like to see it, because we could use it to get it moving. But unfortunately, that's not how planning and infrastructure works. Thanks, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Innes, did you indicate you want to question?
Thank you. On the capital spend, do we have reviews of how the capital has been spent once projects are finished? I'm obviously particularly interested in the MMDR project, which has just come to fruition. There's lots of talk in Melton about, well, the original budget was this, and now we've spent this and whatever. And I think it would be very interesting to have a review of how that project progressed, some of the issues that we came across, how we addressed those issues, so as we can learn from that for the future on major capital projects. Just interested how that process may be initiated and how we could do that.
We actually initiated a review of our kind of overall approach to major capital kind of road projects a few months ago, actually, and as part of that there is some lessons learned and I think a toolkit that we're now going to use for future capital projects. I think that did include some reference to MMDR particularly as well, but I can talk to the service about when that's likely to conclude and how that's going to be shared through members as well, so we can come back to you on that one.
Yeah, I'm also interested in the financial side of it as well, not just the actual project, but also I wasn't here 10, 15 years ago, but some members here would be, but the original budget was quoted at something like, and I can't remember the figure, 30 to 40 million, and ultimately it came out at 130 something. I'm interested to understand the progression of that budget and why the figure grew from an initial figure through to now. I know some of the reasons, of course, and we're talking about inflation, etc., and costs through COVID, etc. But I just want to understand, because the UK has got this bad reputation of budgets going out of control. I'd really like to understand in quite a bit of detail what the progress of the MMDR project was, so as I can, so as we can learn from that as well.
I think we've actually brought some of that kind of analysis of the movement of the budget through cabinet at different points, actually, as we've had to seek that additional budget approval. So some of that I think is already out there in the public domain, but we can look at bringing that together. But I think, as you've mentioned, because this was a significant kind of long-term project, there have been a variety of reasons behind that budget movement. I think inflation has been one of them, but I think there's been some additional works that has been needed at different points. The weather's also played quite a big role there. But that lessons learned review that I talked about has also looked at our procurement approach and how we need to evolve that going forward. And we've already started taking some of those findings into future projects as well. But as I said, some of that kind of trajectory of the budget and the reasons for the increase since the budget was originally set has been reported through cabinet as we've asked for budget approval. So as I said, we can look at bringing that together and reporting that back.
Thank you.
Yeah, just address you, Chair. Maybe for future, when that report is ready, maybe that's something we could review in this scrutiny, because I think it's quite an important lesson to learn for future.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring it here. Whether it sits better with highways, I'm not sure but we'll leave that to officers. It might sit better with highways to review it, but yeah, it'd be good to bring it back to scrutiny to have a look through it. Mr. Poland, you're next.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for the presentation and the report. I suppose my questions are just sort of help me understand a bit more about the dedicated school grants and the blocks and how that all works. So we've obviously got underspends for some of the blocks. Is that because we are only allowed to spend them on very specific things that we can't. You got X amount per pupil, and you've got X number of pupils. Therefore, you've got Y figure. As opposed to just going, we've got an underspend. That's great. We'll give it to the schools to actually spend on some additional things, because constantly, the schools I talk to say we don't have enough money and so forth. Appreciating a lot of them will be academies. So I guess that's a very simple question. That's the first one, and the second one is, I guess, slightly more national. So I can understand from their point of view why the government are going for the lower figure that they can get away with. At least they're giving us something, because for a long time it was a really huge concern. But presumably this is a problem for every council, I guess. So is there anything that we can do through the LGA or through any other sort of pan-council body to put pressure on the government to actually just be a bit sensible about this and just allow us to transfer underspends between one budget and another that we've already got in our account?
Just on that second point, that there is already lobbying going on, as you'd imagine, particularly through Society of County Treasurers and CCN around that point. We can certainly check how formal that's been done, but I'm fairly sure CCN are kind of on the point. And I think part of that lobbying is also around a point Declan made earlier, actually, that if the government are going to use the underspends across the other blocks to net off for calculating the grant, then there ought to be some flexibility then in how we use those underspends, and whether there should be more discretion for the council to be able to use them towards its end deficit. So I said there is already some lobbying going on, but we can double check that it is kind of what scale it's at. In terms of the first question, I think you articulated it quite well anyway, actually, around those blocks are ring fenced for those specific functions, and whilst I think the service will be looking at how those underspends can be best used, there are also a lot of rigid rules around what each block can be used for, and that they can't cross-subsidise the other blocks, which then comes back to that earlier point around, well, if the government are going to use them to net off from the grant calculation, then there needs to be flexibility either both ways or not at all. But this at the moment has created a little bit of a mismatch of rules, I think.
Mr. Piper, just to bring you in, just to tell you that the information I did give you was correct. So the council own the land and the freehold of the Dorothy Goodman School, but they give the academy a 125-year lease. So we own the freehold, the academy run it for us, just to clarify. But you can ask your question now.
Thank you very much. In fact, it's not a question. It was a bit of an answer to Mr. Innes's question. And the MMDR was actually discussed at some length in Highways meeting, I believe, in March. And one of the comments that was made was, yes, it was a little overspent, but the amount of overspend was minimal compared with what happens with most government contracts. And it was due to the weather. I think also it was due to having to redirect the river and other things like that, which hadn't been foreseen. And I'm sure that should Mr. Innes want the detail, that will be available on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. King.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just coming back to this, just asking a bit more detail about this DSG stuff. So obviously we've got end of financial year, just over 99 million deficit on the high needs overall over this whole thing. Reading the report, so obviously the government's bringing in this thing subject to us producing an acceptable reform package of SEND to basically take to absorb some of the deficits. But you've said it's still going to, I think you said somewhere, was it 28 to 32 million or something, or you think we're going to still be on the spike for? But then what happens to the deficit that carries on with the high needs block in future years? And then I'll just throw into the mix in 3 weeks' time or whatever it is, we're going to have an outcome of LGR. So what happens to this deficit then if LGR takes place and then on the 1st of April 2028 we're no longer, there's a new authority, okay? What happens to this DSG deficit and any other deficits or debts that we have and everything else? does this get passed over to the new authority, or is it pro-rated depending? I mean, can you just explain that a bit? And how's that going to work with these deficit reduction plans that you've outlined? Thank you.
So in terms of the first question around future deficits then, so government have only confirmed the support for deficits as at the 31st of March 2026, so that 99 million. Obviously deficits will continue to accrue, and I think the report refers to potentially that getting up to sort of the 400 million mark if the current trajectory continued. Government have so far said that there will be support available for those future deficits up to the point, so from end of March 20, we've got statutory override in place at the moment up to the end of March 2028, whereby that deficit sort of sits off our balance sheet. At the point that the statutory override ends at the end of March 2028, and the deficit then will transfer to the DfE. But in between kind of March 26 and 28, as you said, that deficit will continue to accrue. Government haven't given any firm commitment to what the support beyond March 26 will look like, other than saying that it will be fair and proportionate, I think was the word, the phrase that was used. So there will be some form of support for deficits to continue to accrue. We don't yet know what that will look like, whether it will still be the 90%, whether it will be something different. And we don't yet know when that will be confirmed in terms of when government will give us some clarity on what that's going to look like for the next 2 years. So that all we know so far is the 90% as at the end of March 2026. And then in terms of LGR, the deficit that continues to accrue from now up to March 2028, depending on the government decision in July, that deficit would need to, for instance, in an option where there's a city expansion, the deficit would need to be a portion between the county unitary and the city. In the 3 unitary options, so the North City South, again, the deficit would need to be apportioned between the 2 new North and South unitaries. So once we know what the government's decision is, there will be a process whereby we have to go through the council's current balance sheet and decide how that gets split depending on the option that's decided on. And then any government support that then goes towards that deficit would also need to be prorated in the same way.
Yep.
So just on that last point about the deficit being prorated across, is that based on where the deficits originated? I mean, because high needs block, obviously it's very specific to specific localities, isn't it? Schools and what, where the pupils go basically. So is it going to be based on where the pupils go, or is it just going to be 50-50 or a third to each or something like that? I mean, how's that who's going to decide that as well? Are you able to say that? Thank you.
No decisions have been made in terms of any of that detail yet, and I guess it would be up to I think the government position is it is the new authority or authorities that have to make those decisions, all the decisions on what the new funding looks like. So it would be for whatever the new authorities look like to make those decisions between them and agree on an appropriate basis for doing that. Whether that is something more specific, like you've said, around where the deficit falls, I think that would probably be quite difficult, or whether it's on a simpler basis around population or net budget or something. But there hasn't been any decisions as yet. But it is something that there has to be local agreement on rather than the government kind of mandating that, I think.
So the new authorities could be landed with a poison chalice, right? I know you're not saying that, but that just indicates they could be landed with a poison chalice debt straight at the beginning.
That day one, yeah.
Got going. Thanks very much.
How much are we bankrolling at the minute for DSG? So we're 99 overspent. How much have we got in the pot currently to pay off?
So the reserve, as at the end of March, stands at roughly 60 million. So we're obviously cash flowing the whole of the deficit at the moment. So we're cash flowing the whole of the 99 million, and then we've got some earmark reserve set aside that we'll need because there will be a shortfall. But in terms of the cash flow impact, it is the full sort of 99 million.
Okay. And you just said the statutory override is going to stay. So once the government decide what they're doing with what they're paying off, and we continue to grow the deficit, that's still going to be sitting off the books till 2028 when the Department for Education takes over that, and then we don't know what's going to happen with that yet. Okay.
In terms of the non 90% bit, it's pretty clear we're going to have to pay that piece. It's just the only thing the government's just taking a wait and see approach for the sort of the deficit that will get accumulated over the next sort of few years before they take it over.
Right. So we know we're going to have to pay the 28-32 million. Then we know, and then we don't know what's going to happen between 28 and
So
26-28.
So we don't have an exact figure yet because they're going to come in and do an audit, and nobody's been through it yet, so we don't quite know what to expect, how aggressive they'll be, how pernickety they'll be, etc. But yeah, we are going to. It is absolutely certain we're going to have to pay a chunk of money that's going to be, multiple millions towards the SCND, regardless of what the government's sort of final solution is.
That's going to wipe a huge amount of our reserves then, basically.
He'll take a chunk of it. I mean, it's been discussed. It's a better position than we feared. Maybe kind of 9 months ago. It's not as good as it could have been, but it is better than what it could have been.
Okay, I've just got a few questions to go through. Just on paragraph 70, the central contingencies. You've said there that the MTFS risk contingencies of 8 million was held to cover any in-year changes and not needed now, so they're going to contribute that to reserves to fund the efficiency review. So are we saying that we do not need a risk contingency now or in the future? Have we just wiped that out now?
It's only in relation to 25-26. So the budget for 26-27 and the MTFS still includes that 8 million every year. That's just referring to the budget for 25-26 that we didn't need. So it's only the 25-26 amount. It still remains in the budget in future years.
Thank you. And just going on to the ILP. So the performance and risk of that, the property estate shows a 1.2 million adverse variance driven by office vacancies. So how exposed is the council to sort of ongoing decline in office markets? Are we looking to change that, I suppose? And what's the strategy for managing the voids and reducing a reliance on commercial office income? Because obviously that doesn't seem to be the way that the world's going now. So what plans are there to cover all that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. I think we've seen the way the market's moving is the fact that people, since COVID, haven't really come back to the office in the way that, well, maybe we did anticipate it. So I think with regards to ILP, going forward, we'll be looking at investments that move away from those kind of things. Obviously, that's going to be subject to planning conditions because, that's out of our hands. But particularly with actually coming back to Lutterworth East, I think that's probably a good example of it. North of the road, you've got a map would be really useful here actually, but apologies, don't have that. Along the Spine Road, as well as the housing development, we've also got some smaller commercial sites. The initial plan was to have offices there, but as you correctly pointed out, that's not really viable anymore. So we're looking at trying to get changes in planning conditions to be able to have other things there, whether it be, I don't know, kind of restaurants or maybe hotels, that kind of thing. Point is that we're cognizant of it, and moving forward, we are moving away from offices because they're not really the best money makers, to be honest. So yeah.
And obviously, the return on investment drops from 5.8 to 2.9 when the wider assets are included. So how does that compare to expectations when the programme was originally sort of approved? And at what point does the council reconsider its investment strategy if those returns remain sort of suppressed? So is there a view on where you're going with this?
We do undertake regular reviews of the ILP strategy, and we are due to do another review this year, actually, as part of the MTFS process for 27-28. So that strategy review will consider, exactly those points really, and ensure that we do maintain that kind of diversified portfolio, and that strategy review does come through to scrutiny as part of the MTFS planning. Just coming back to one point now, in terms of the overall ILP performance this year, although as you mentioned, the office sort of sector hasn't performed as we would like. Overall, the ILP income is actually slightly ahead of the budget position that we set. So whilst we've got, and this is the reason that we keep that diversified portfolio in different sectors, that whilst one might not perform as we might have liked, actually there's other elements of the portfolio that have done better, and you are spreading that kind of risk and volatility around. So it's just to make that point, that overall ILP has performed as we budgeted for.
If I may as well, Madam Chair, I think when you put into context as well that the 2.9% is when you incorporate things like the rural estate as well. And obviously with that, we're not just chasing returns, because we have a wider position when it comes to like looking after our farms and the the rural nature of the county. I think some of it as well, there are some hidden returns in unrealised gains as well, because that's just looking at income. But when it comes to our land base, obviously with the appreciation of land value over time as well, if you incorporate those two together, you generally see a much better return. So yeah, I think the numbers don't quite represent the full story, I would say.
Yeah, I realise that's a point, but there might come a point where you think this is just not working and we need to rethink how we do this. So it's just flagging that, really. And just my last point, obviously just reading through all of the sort of overspend. So supported living, adults and communities, 1.7 million overspend. Direct cash payments, adults and communities, 1.2 overspend. Social care transport, nearly $1 million overspend. And I suppose when you look at all that, these are our largest overspends through the whole report, all relate to demand-led services. So what confidence do we have that these pressures are fully reflected in future budgets and we're not going to continue to overspend, or are we going to sit in this position of overspending every single year? Have you looked at whether we are trying to get within budget rather than overspending on these areas, demand-led areas?
So as part of the MTFS process each year, we do look at what's happening with demand in year, and we forecast what we expect the growth to be in future years. So there was a significant amount of social care growth within the MTFS for future years. So and we do keep that under review as we go through each of the kind of MTFS refreshes, which we'll be doing again in the summer. But particularly in adults, there has been a lot of demand management work, and I think the Fair Outcomes panel that's referenced in the report, you can see that started really to have a good impact across some of the larger kind of demand budgets in adults. And in terms of percentage, I think, just using adults as an example, it's actually that they had an underspend of just under 4 million, which is about 1.5%. But they are very large, significant budgets, and some of those overspends, in terms of percentage terms, they are quite minor. But there is a lot of demand management work that the departments are doing, and we have tried to use that data to forecast future growth so that the MTFS is an accurate reflection as possible of what that position is. But as you've said, they are demand led, so there is naturally going to be some volatility within those budgets.
And you mentioned the Fair Access panel. How long's that been in place?
It's at least a couple of years now. I think they were in place before we brought the financial controls in. So it's at least 2 years, possibly longer.
Any other questions on this paper from anybody? Okay, the Commission's asked to note this report. Thank you very much. Okay, as advised, we're going to switch the agenda around. So we're now going to move on to the Leicestershire County Council's Customer Experience Strategy, pages 87 to 94. Jane Glasgow, Assistant Director of Corporate Resources, will take us through that report, along with Dorabella, yeah, she's Hadley, Head of Customer Service, and Kate Murphy, the Change Lead. And you're staying for this item, I think, as well, Mr. Fowler. So just let everyone settle. So over to you, Jane, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides the Commission with an update on the delivery of the Council's customer experience strategy and the progress that we've made over the last year for how residents access and experience our services. Strategy refers to our customers as any individual, group, or organization that interacts with or receives assistance, support, or guidance from the Council. This includes everyone from Leicestershire residents to businesses operating in the county. Strategy was created for 4 main reasons: to set up a clear direction for customer experience across the Council and a clear framework for how staff should interact with customers and the standards the Council wants to achieve, to improve consistency and transparency, ensuring that our customer experience standards and approach are consistent across all services, and being clear with customers about what they should expect from us. To build on the learning from the Council's ongoing customer program, strategy draws on lessons from earlier projects such as Blue Badge, school admissions, and adult social care. To help deliver better services more efficiently, Council's medium-term financial strategy anticipates improving the customer experience will enable savings and growth mitigation through the cost per contact and decreasing avoidable contact. The report highlights encouraging progress within the Customer Service Centre and the Education Service with demonstrable results. For example, call handling rates in the SEN Assessment Service are above target at 92%. The CSC, Customer Service Centre, has halved its wait time to just 4 minutes. We've seen improved customer access and clearer routes into services through structured online contact forms and the option to book appointments for critical services such as Blue Badge help. Digital uptake is increasing. In CSC, this has risen from 42% to 50%, and in Senna, 82% of contact now comes through the online route. And we've also seen an overall improvement in operational efficiency. Customer demand expands much wider than those areas we've currently covered, and the scaled demand across the council will need greater focus over the years ahead, with plans to continue improving performance and ensuring more consistent application of the strategy council-wide. The report also outlines the next phase of this work, including strengthening performance reporting, continued service improvement, and the careful use of new opportunities such as artificial intelligence to support a better customer experience. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Fowler, I think you want to add at this point?
Not particularly, actually. I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, questions, members? Mr. King?
I'll let Mr. Smith go first. I think he was before.
You don't have that
That's very
authority, but I'll let you.
If you were authority.
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. From a member's point of view, I think the CSC has improved massively recently, so well done on that. We do seem to get the responses back a lot quicker, but I still get an awful lot of complaints from residents that they find it very difficult to navigate, particularly the website. I know we've talked in the past about a 2-click to where you want to go destination and things like that, but in my business, we've just recently employed an AI bot, and it was interesting when you picked up on that, Jane, when you said, implementing these things. They are fantastic. I mean, they steer people, because we now live in a world where people they want things now. They're not interested in an email back saying, we've received your email, we'll get back to you in 24 hours. They want the answers there and then. And for a small business to invest in something that has literally changed our business, for Greek corporations like the LCC, this could be done at such a small cost and improve these stats 10, 20-fold. Thank you.
I have to admit, I struggle with our website, to be honest, trying to navigate it, and I use it every single day, so I know what residents struggle. It's not the easiest to navigate.
So there's 2 really good points there. The first one is on the artificial intelligence side. We've been testing internally an AI bot, and we've done it initially, tested it against officers, essentially, because what we didn't want to do is use the customer as a guinea pig. That didn't feel like a sensible thing to do. So we've been using it in the CSC, we've been using it on the IT service desk, and a number of other areas to make sure we have the experience that we can test it appropriately. We can protect the public against the hallucinations that artificial intelligence does and so forth. And it's actually turned out to be very effective internally. So much so that it's helped provide support for phone calls about suicide and things like that very, very quickly, supporting our officers in provision of those services, for example. So it's been very, very positive. We are planning on seeking permission to go live with that in the next month or so. We do have it ready. We've had it in front of customer panels as well as internal panels and full testing, because we think it'll make a huge difference, because you can just ask the plain language and you'll get a plain language response. In parallel to that, we've also been looking at the website, because we haven't done a major rehash of the website in about 7 or 8 years. And we are going through a lot of work to improve, the content in there, because one of the challenges with the content, as I'm sure you're aware, is we have a tendency to talk in councilese. And so we're trying to make that much simpler to read. The second thing we're doing is looking at those navigation paths. So making sure that people can get to things, as you say, much quicker, far less clicks, etc., as we go through that process. So that is underway.
I think when you search something, you put in the search box, it doesn't take you to anything that you've actually put in there. It's just rubbish, to be honest. So I think that's really good. I'd be interested to do the bot with members. Why are members not been included in that trial?
We can absolutely include members in that. I'm quite happy to bring it forward and maybe do an all-member meeting and introduce it to you and allow you to have a go with it.
We're the eyes and ears for you on the ground with residents, and we understand the struggles they have. So I think it'd be really good for members to trial that, and we can feed back to you about whether they think it's what customers would help them. So yeah, if members are happy, I think we should get members to trial it. Thank you. Mr. King, you were next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, partly to echo what Mr. Smith just said, I think there are some positive improvements from the performance. However, what you've said, Jane, is clearly there's still a lot of scope to improve further. So what I'm trying to understand is what's the future target to get wait times down to? I mean, obviously very impressive. You cut it by over 50%. But 4.5 minutes or whatever it is still a long time for people to wait on a phone. And the other thing is the volume of dropped calls. So in all the other very positive data, there's only been a very slight dip in the volume of dropped calls or missed calls or whatever they're called. So what's the plan to kind of tackle that? And then finally, Chair, if I may, I suppose my concern is just linking it back to previously. It's, in 2 years' time, we're going to have some new councils and we don't know which way the salami slice is going to go, basically, whether we're going to get sliced and diced into 3, 2, or some other combo. And I'm just concerned, I suppose, as I'm sure many people are, about, because this essentially is the front line of the county council, and a lot of the calls are to do with adult social care, children's services, very important things. And if all of a sudden we're not responsible for that anymore in 2 years' time, and a new council is, how are they going to cope with the volume of calls? Because most of the district councils have got very small call centres, even my own, and they're not set up to deal with 100,000 calls a year or whatever it is. So I'm just trying to understand, is there some work going on in the background you can talk to us about as well, about LGR, what permutations may or may not, and what the impact could be? Thank you.
I'll comment, if it's all right, on the LGR question first. So, as I'm sure you're aware, we're going through no regrets work with the districts, the city, etc., at the moment to understand the scope of what all the services are that each of us provides. So when that decision is proposed and we understand what that new makeup looks like, we have the necessary information to help work together to design a new set of services. In parallel to that, myself and a lot of other officers in the organization are speaking with peers who have been through this process with other authorities. And one of the key discussion points is that transition for the citizen and resident through to vesting day and then post-vesting day for the service transition across potentially what might be multiple authorities or a single authority as we go through that process. And there's a lot of really good work there that we're using to inform do that. What I have been impressed with is certainly in the peer groups that I'm working with at the moment, everybody's working really well together and very much focused on the citizen, the resident, as sort of what do we do to ensure this is as smooth as possible for them. I think in reality, for a period of time, a number of services we will provide as effective as possible a customer service wrap or a layer that makes sure people get through to the right teams, because it won't be a magic day one vesting of multiple teams into a single team. And we need to make sure that signposting is clear and correct. And I think one of the things that's really heartening for me is we've learned an awful lot about signposting and navigating our customers to where they need to be over the last 2 or 3 years as a result of this. So I'm much more confident now than I would have been 3 years ago about how to handle that. In terms of the first question, I will hand over to Katie and Darabella in just a minute. But the call and drop call question in relation to this, so there's 2 components to this. When you're looking at page 89 in table C, for example, and you're only seeing now 1% reduction, that is the total call volume across the whole authority and isn't specific to sort of those focused call centers. So that is just as likely to include a call to myself or Declan, for example, from a salesperson, as it is a contact center, etc. So those are the overarching statistics. What we're seeing is the performance in those very specific call center areas where we have that technology in place. Those call rates are much, much higher. and those wait times are much better handled. But what I will do is defer to Darabella and Katie just to provide a little bit more detail.
So I'll just talk about the CSC, the team that I look after, who predominantly deal with E&T related inquiries, along with school admissions. So call queue times do fluctuate depending on the type of contact we're receiving, the time of year. For example, for last month, we were under 3 minutes in terms of an average. We prioritise some lines. So for highways in particular, we have an immediate danger line, which has a call answer time of usually within 30 seconds. And that was working with our police colleagues in terms of making sure that those calls were picked up quicker. So there is a bit of effective resource planning in terms of prioritisation that happens. If we have things such as severe weather events, particularly on our highways lines, that can increase wait times, as we will prioritise in terms of the nature of the call as well. Fortunately, we do have some self-serve options, which helps an awful lot. And in terms of future-wise, we're currently looking at a callback facility. So residents that call us don't need to be hanging on. They can get a call back when they're at the front of the queue, which tends to help in terms of customer experience. But we're not quite there with that. There's just some technical things we need to iron out, but that's the plan in terms of helping with that whole experience around queue times.
Just to add to that further, I suppose we've always got that sort of challenge between resourcing. The more resource we've got, the better performance we'll have, but equally having to sort of balance that against needing to make savings and efficiencies. So I think the main sort of strategy for kind of getting to an improved queue time position or handling position is always around how can we support that self-service route and the website and the AI. I would expect over the coming months, if we go live with that, it will really drastically reduce the call volumes, and therefore you'll see performance go up straight away. So I think there is quite a big reliance on that channel shift in improving that position overall.
Mr. Poland.
Thank you very much. For a couple of questions, if that's okay, related to each other. First of all, just wanted a bit more information on the AI bot you mentioned. Is this essentially is this the same as the CSC email that we use, but it's a bot? Is that what it is, or is it wider than that, or what? Basically, just getting a bit more information on that. And the second question, which is also AI related. So I use, that's like half the Western world, I guess. I use AI quite a lot, increasingly a lot. 2 years ago, I'd never used it at all and never heard of it. And someone did some research for me, and that took them a few seconds that I was expecting them to take 6 hours, and it changed my life basically. So I'm now a convert to AI, and I'm a bit of a technophobe by nature, if I'm honest. Okay. However, I came to use it not long ago actually to do some research for something in my division, and noticed I couldn't access it from my LCC laptop. So literally just on Saturday, I wrote to Rosemary and asked, why is that, effectively? And she was good. She come back to me with something I didn't know we had, and that's an AI LCC policy, okay, which I didn't know we had and had read. So I read through that, and I guess part of that was that led to more questions for me. So it was very much focused on the opportunities that AI can present, but there was also quite a big focus on ensuring that didn't then replace jobs. And that's definitely a conversation we need to have, because it's a concern of mine actually that the AI revolution has started. This is not something we're going to be able to put back in its box. It's coming, and we don't want to be Luddites about this, but equally it has a serious potential to affect the job market and how organizations operate more generally. The flip side of that, of course, is that we could save huge amounts of money, time, efficiency, and all of that. So I guess the second part of my question is to maybe to the chair, and is it worth us actually having this as a standalone item at some point to look into AI, what the potential we could use it for is? Should people, so the long and the short of that last story, by the way, is I have to ask permission to be able to use AI, and that might or might not be granted to me, right? But should it be the case that actually anyone can just use it in their roles without having to go through the rigmarole to sort of get permission, just use AI if it's useful? What are the opportunities there? What are the concerns that we should be aware of there. And going into LGR, absolutely AI is going to be the future, and sort of building a system that can work on what we do as accounting now, but also what boroughs currently do now, so that when unitary comes in, you can have a one-stop shop where I can check me tip times, but I can also check me council house or something like that. So that, you know, we don't build a system now that won't work when we get to LGR.
I don't know what you were trying to AI that the council wouldn't let you. So maybe I won't ask that question, but ours is contained, isn't it? Copilot. Ah, yeah, you can't use that. We use Copilot. We've got Copilot here, haven't we? That is contained within. It's got a wrap around it to keep the information in here, so it doesn't go to places that we don't want it to. So we can use Copilot, which is very similar to ChatGPT. But this is my point, that members should have been involved in your development of your AI bot. So we're kind of catching up now, and members need to be included in these sorts of things going forward. But whether we're too late to it now, or you know, if we're going to have a trial, but a briefing, and then maybe we look at scrutiny. But I don't know why members have been excluded from these sort of developments. Members should be fully involved in this.
I don't think it was our intent to exclude, so apologies if that's the feeling. In terms of, let's come to the policy first. So one of the things that we want to ensure is that sensitive council data, as Taylor said, it does not leave council network. And one of the risks with using some of the publicly available models is that the data then goes into their learning and then becomes part of that sort of base information set. So we are encouraging the use of AI technologies, but in a way that's responsible from a data perspective. So we do use Copilot, and we do actually use some localized ChatGPT models and some other LLMs, large language models as well, in that process. But there are some risks associated with that. And some of the key risks that we have to think about is no robot or AI should ever be making a decision that negatively impacts a human being, for example, without some form of human intervention. There's some key principles like that we want to ensure. There should still be a human in the loop on a decision that impacts a human person. And so some of those key principles we absolutely want to maintain. We want to ensure that decisions are traceable, accountable, transparent. And again, the policy is designed to make sure that we're using the technology in a way that we can do that. But to go back to the first point, for the initial bot will be about surfacing and finding information on the website initially. We are looking in the future at how we could use that bot to then perform actions on behalf of the customer. So going to the bot and saying, I'd like to report a pothole. Bot at this point would take you to the form and you'd go off and do the form. But what I do see in the future is that bot having a conversation with you. Maybe you call the CSC in the future and you get the bot and you're driving along the 453 or whatever. And it's 453, it's not ours, is it? But the 46 or something. And and you need to report a pothole. And actually you can just talk to the bot and report it in that sort of makes sense. So I do see that happening in the future. We do have the technology that allows us to do that. But I think we take steps one at a time and we learn what we're doing as we go through this process.
That brings me back to my point that we've been battling for God knows how many years, is to get an app for this council. So I still hold the view that we should have an app. Did you want to come back, Mr. Powell?
Yeah, just to thank you for that answer. I think it's really interesting, and as I say, it's got huge potential to change the way that society works well beyond LCC. I do wonder whether it's something that we could have as either a standalone item, or frankly even a working group, because this could revolutionise how we operate, but that may come at a cost. and that's an intensely interesting but an incredibly sensitive matter that I think that as I say, at least should be a scrutiny item and perhaps even a standalone working group.
Shall I leave that with you, Mr. Fowler, to look at how you can involve members in here, because we feel very out of the loop, I think, and we should be fully in the loop. So can I leave that with you about how you look at members involved in this?
Sure. Yeah.
Mr. Piper.
Thank you very much, Chair. My first comment was going to be, and it was a comment more than a question, but I've recently been receiving some complaints that when people contact the service centre, they don't get a reference back as to who they spoke to or how to follow up. So that they get an answer back from an anonymous email, and then if they want to query that, they have to go through the whole loop again. So I'm not sure if there is an easier way of handling that at all. I think going back to Mr. Perlin's point about AI, we did have a briefing about AI, which did talk about Copilot. And if I remember correctly, it was in the main council chamber. And that was a little while ago, where it was expressed that Copilot should be just that, a Copilot, and that we should keep control of it and not let it run away with us. So there was that. The other thing is talking about potholes. You brought up something with there which was very interesting, and with the chair's comment about apps. I use a sat-nav app called Waze, W-A-Z-E, on which you can report potholes. Wouldn't it be great if that actually automatically reported it to the local county council? Because there are a number of potholes reported on that, and seemingly a number of people that I speak to don't know how to report potholes to the council. And even when I tell them, email me, they don't. They wait till we meet, and by which time. So just 3 comments more than questions. Thank you, Chair.
We'll take those under advisement. Thank you.
Could I, sorry, just come in on the follow-up process? Is that okay? So there are designed follow-up processes within the telephony route. So if somebody is contacted us once and chooses to follow up, they'll get straight through to an advisor, so they don't have to queue and choose multiple options. So there's that route that exists. There is also a follow-up route online with a contact form. So there is a designed route. And what all residents should get, if they've submitted an inquiry, particularly online, they should always get a reference number. If it's a highways related inquiry, they may get 2 reference numbers, and that's been a cause of confusion in the past, and we can't change that easily because we've got one that goes into our case management system, which is an FS reference number, and then if it's an inquiry for highways, it's likely to make its way into confirm, which is HMS, which is a highways management system, hence that reference number. But either or will get us to the inquiry that's been logged. But I appreciate that can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but there are designated follow-up processes both online and via the telephony route.
Just picking up your point as well, because obviously as a councillor we report lots of things and I get all these automatic replies, but they don't tell me what it's related to. So I've got multiple reference numbers that I have no idea which one relates to what I've raised, because it doesn't actually tell you, does it? And then you get another email saying, we've got this is your reference number, but then I have to try and relate that back to what I actually raised. So it's very difficult for councillors to follow.
And I think for that reason, in terms of maybe the 2 reference numbers, what you should always generally get if it's a highways matter is an automated response from the highway system that says we've got your inquiry of, and it might be a full gully or whatever it is, the subject matter. And there's ongoing work with highways colleagues to try and streamline and simplify communications, but generally they do give you the subject matter that should help identify which inquiry it is. But if you're getting multiple, I can see that it can be a job to keep on top of those.
I get 10 pothole replies and I have no idea which pothole it relates to.
Right.
But I have to. Mr. Mullaney.
Thank you, Chair. It was really just looking at the contacts volume into the council. I noticed that county hall visits, which is a fairly low share anyway, has halved over a year, which seems quite a big drop. Is that simply a natural decline over the years that fewer and fewer people are visiting, or is there a policy that if somebody visits with a complaint, they're then advised that in future it's more efficient to go via phone and email, and that's why there's been such a big drop in a year of actual visits?
I
think it's a good question. The way that we're sort of monitoring what comes in terms of visits is very much, it could be anything and everything. And I think there are peaks and troughs from year to year based on kind of consultations that might be out and around, or an influx of a recruitment campaign that kind of drives people to have to come to County Hall. But I think the reduction is where the work of this strategy is kind of improving that reduction, is where we're improving the online offering. So, for example, the work on child licensing means that kind of employers or chaperones don't need to necessarily come into County Hall multiple times to show us documents. We can do that more, automated online. So it's those sort of improvements that are driving a proportion of the decrease. But I imagine there will be fluctuation from year to year based on the events that happen in that year for the council as a whole. So.
And just a couple of points from me. Obviously, a lot of this stuff that we're seeing improving now is what we brought in sort of 2 or 3 years ago, isn't it? And there's been a lot of work, I know, to try and improve this. So it's good to actually see that all that hard work is actually paying off now, and we're improving. And just picking up on the complaints that received in 24, 25, to see a reduction in that is really good. So well done on all the work. So I know you've worked incredibly hard on all this and took a lot of feedback and a lot of challenge from me personally, actually, over the years. So well done on actually getting somewhere. So yeah, if we can pick up the IR thing that we've spoke about today, that would be good. Any other comments from anybody else? No? Okay, so we're just asked to note this report. Thank you all for coming. Okay, we'll now move back to our annual update on the traded services strategy, school food service and Bow Manor Hall engagement. This is on page 73 to 86. And we've got Richard Hunt, strategic programme lead, that will take us through this along with Jane. You're remaining here. So just get Richard to settle and then I'll hand over to you.
Good morning. The report before you sets out the performance of Leicestershire Traded Services for the year 2025 to 2026. Overall, during that financial year, the services that comprise LTS made a contribution to the council of £119,000, although this was a variance to budget of £638,000. And the table on page 74 of your pack sets out the variances and some of the macro challenges to the services that the County Council delivers, particularly around the challenging financial circumstances of key customers, which are largely schools and academies. The Commission will recall that the Cabinet took a decision to close the school food service at the end of this academic year. The project to manage the closure is proceeding well and to target, and we're supporting any staff at risk of redundancy to find alternative employment. We're really pleased that all of our current customers are going to be working with new suppliers in the new academic year, and we've assisted schools in finding new suppliers for their catering service. Despite this year being one of significant change in the school food service, the team have managed to deliver a financial surplus for the first time since the pandemic, in marked contrast to the significant losses of previous years. The report also lays out the results of the engagement activity around Bow Manor, and the Commission inputted into that engagement exercise when it was taking place last year. We were delighted by the scale and high quality of the engagement and grateful to so many individuals, organisations and businesses who were very generous with their time and ideas. The paper sets out in some detail the suggestions that have come back from the public, and these have been examined and considered to create a short list of proposals that will be examined and worked up by officers in more detail. And we're currently in the process of doing further due diligence and costings for some of the items which are outlined in paragraph 74.
Thank you, Richard. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair. No, thanks, Richard, for that. My question is related to Bow Manor, actually. I mean, I actually commend the new administration on they're looking for new things to make Bow Manor a success, and along with the previous administration as well. And I think it's really important that we do sort of restore these historic buildings and keep them in public ownership and things like that. But at some point, we have to realise that this is a weight around this council's neck, and it really is. I think it can be a success. And along the lines, if I may bring it back to something in my division, which I know you're well aware of, is Snibston Colliery Park. It was failing, the cafeteria was failing under LCC management. Under private management, it's now flourishing. And I think the opportunity is actually there. So it's my questions are around, are we the best person to deliver these savings? You mentioned 100k. How much time and effort has gone into making that 100k? How many officers are involved in that? And we talk about it being a wedding venue, and I know we've had conversations in the past of doing almost like a multiple wedding venue rather than just a single wedding on the day and things like that. And there's opportunities there for things like that. But is the council the best person to manage that? With regards to the facility itself, we know it's in a state of disrepair. We know it's going to cost a lot of money to get back up. How much time and effort do we have to put into that to get it to where it needs to be, as opposed to if we give it to somebody to manage it on our behalf, to take a rental yield, to bring that back up to scratch and to make it a thriving facility? Because a lot of these things we see here, we put I think I read the other day that wedding fees are going up. The administration are doing that, and I understand why. I totally get it. But then you look at recent government legislation. I think it's going through government at the minute, where they're going to basically get rid of restrictions on where you can have weddings. So essentially, it's going to make it cheap or free. I think that's a huge issue, because we're putting our fees up, and all of a sudden, if the legislation changes in 6 months' time, and I can have it in my back garden for nothing, guess where? I am not going to go to Bow Manor Hall. So it's almost like the council are coming back and saying, guys, we're going to be opening a brand new blockbuster video, and then the rest of the world's gone to digital live streaming. Thank you.
I think on the first point about kind of how services are delivered, I think that's kind of a secondary point in some ways to working out what's the right basket of services to be delivered from Bow Manor, and it's definitely part of the conversation, and it's where it's been really helpful to have so many conversations with private sector operators as well, in order to sort of influence how we might think about that. So I'd certainly say that is absolutely part of thinking in terms of that flexibility around how we might deliver things in the future. I think in terms of the wedding element as well, wedding fees, it's fair to say the wedding fees that are increased is around the registration fee, which is obviously different to the Bow Manor venue fee. So there's a slight difference there, but also acknowledging that, again, the longer term trend is potentially towards that change in a way around the mechanics of wedding registration, which will affect lots of venues across the county, and is something that, again, we're feeding into our thinking around how the venue would need to adapt in the future. And that's the case for any wedding venue in the whole country, were those changes to come into effect.
Mr. Mullaney.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, in terms of the school meal service, this was something which I opposed at the time, the withdrawal from it. I think it was regarded as a high quality service. I think a lot of people thought it was doing a very good job. I see that 86 out of the 102 sites had achieved the highest 5-star rating from the standards auditor. And in terms of the financial side of it, although it had been losing money after COVID and so on, it was turned around into a more positive situation. It did end up making 101,000 profit, which I think was greater than it was expected at the Scrutiny Commission meeting in November when it was discussed. And I also note from paragraph 12 that it probably would have made a bigger profit than 101 if it hadn't been for the announcement of the closing the service, which obviously led to a decline in numbers. So I just really to say I think it was disappointing this decision was taken, because on grounds of quality, where you had a quality service, and in terms of finances, where it had been turned round and had been turned into a profit after being loss making, I think it's a disappointing decision that we've lost what was a very good service.
I have to agree with you, Michael. I objected to it as well. I thought it was something that we should continue to do, but that decision was taken, wasn't it? Can I just ask how many redundancies there were?
Thank you, Declan. So out of a obviously the workforce numbers changed slightly, but kind of at its peak, the workforce was around 800. Of the frontline staff, we are foreseeing a maximum of 2 redundancies from the frontline staff. It's fair to say we've worked throughout the process to do everything we can to redeploy, to ensure that staff move over to new providers and things like that. So we're thinking there'll be around 2 frontline staff. Of the management and administration teams, we are anticipating, again, the maximum could be 11 posts that we've made redundant there. And again, we're continuing to support staff to aim to redeploy as much as possible. And we've had a really good track record of that over the past few months as we've supported our staff as much as we can.
So how much of those redundancies cost the authority?
That's not a number I have with me today, I'm afraid.
Can you, sir?
There is a in paragraphs 24 to 25, there are some estimated costs for what we believe the top end figure of the redundancies could have come in at. So that, again, we won't be able to confirm that until the redundancies have gone through, but that is set out in the paper in points 24 to 25.
So am I looking at the figure of 650k?
That was the maximum possible, yeah.
So we made 101 profit, and now we've just cost us 650.
So that was the maximum, but it's the latest forecast is these costs have fallen to 360,000. But it's important to have the context as well. That 100,000 profit isn't a sustainable profit. Schools were continuing to look elsewhere. So all we were doing really is kind of waiting for losses to come as that service was necessitated keeping shrinking over the years. This was the sort of the lower cost exit option, and it was sort of a much more kind of managed transition to new providers for the school, as opposed to just hoping that schools wouldn't go, when actually the track record was schools were choosing price over what we were offering.
Did you want to come in, Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, just quickly, just to kind of add a bit of context, pretty much what Declan said is the way that schools were going. Like, yes, we were proud of the service in the sense that it was high quality. There's no getting away from the fact that we did provide a really quality service, and that's true. But the 101,000 profit from the previous year is a little bit of a red herring, because, like Declan says, schools, yes, we provided a good service, but they weren't as interested in that as academies as going to people that provided them a better deal. They couldn't afford it anymore, unfortunately. The way that the pressures for schools have materialised, and are going to get worse as well, meant that it was inevitable that it was going to be losing money overall in the end. So it just wasn't a viable thing for us to do. It wasn't a viable thing for schools to do. We were just following market direction, basically. That's why we did it. I know it was unpopular, but that's the truth.
Thank you. Mr. King.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you, Richard, for your presentation. I know it's a very difficult area. Just want to look at the table in paragraph 8. Am I right in my interpretation that the overall outturn for the whole year across all services was only well, I'm just trying to understand what your figures are showing there. So was there the total loss across traded services was 638, or was that the total positive contribution? I'm just trying to understand what you're actually showing.
No, the positive contribution was as mentioned earlier. It's in the outturn column at the bottom. So the 120, the furthest column over to the right was the variance to budget.
Right, okay. So I see. So basically, it's the loss at Bow Manor of 627 that's basically dipped everyone else down, because overall, most of those lines are showing a positive contribution, aren't they? Which is good, apart from the Century Theatre. So, I mean, my take on this is the decision on school catering that's been taken. I mean, that's, we are where we are. I'm just concerned about the use of the word profit, because I think you might mean trading surplus rather than profit strictly as a profit and loss account. It would have to take into account all the kind of other sort of factors. So I'm just curious as to whether that is the case. I think we've had this discussion before, so I'm not sure it's strictly profit in the profit and loss financial sense, but it's a trading surplus. But coming back to the Bow Manor, and I agree with Mr. Smith to some extent. I think the problem with this is if we sat down and said, right, Bow Manor Hall, how much to get it up to an reasonable standard is it going to cost to the county council to invest into this asset? I think we've had the conversation before that it was going to cost a lot of money. Can't remember the precise amount, but a lot of money. I don't really see anything changing with that, with the current financial climate of the county council and the fact that we've got LGR going on and everything else. I mean, my view hasn't really changed. I think it's a lovely thing historically that we've had, and all sorts of reasons, and people may have got happy memories of going there, but it's an anachronism from yesteryear, and in my view, we should seek to get rid of it. Basically, we should seek a disposal program and let someone from the private sector take it over, because we just haven't got the capital to invest into this project unless the administration are going to bankroll it with millions of pounds of investment. Because as Mr. Smith said, and we've said this here before, people's expectations have risen. What they expect now from a venue like this, what they expect in terms of quality and service and all the rest of it, are massively increased even from a few years ago. And it's a constant. You've got to keep investing, because it is a highly competitive environment. So I don't see us doing that. So I think an appraisal needs to be taken and a decision needs to be made, instead of just sitting, we just seem to be skirting around the issues. And yes, we've had a nice bit of talking to people about it, and that's great, and there may be some good ideas out of that. But I think, for me, I don't think this is for the county council to take forward, and I think we should be seeking to sell it off, basically, or long lease it, so someone can actually secure and actually invest into it and provide some suitable venue that will meet market expectations and customer expectations. Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
I mean, I suppose it's been pointed out a couple of times, with any business, you've got to keep on top of what you're doing. And there's obviously the engagement event was sort of a first pass in building up a business case for the future of the Bow Manor. So the comments that have sort of been raised will be taken into account. That sort of what do you need to do to maintain the hall? Because it is what it is. It's an old sort of beautiful building, so you do need to keep investing, whether you like it or not. How much you need to invest will depend on what the future use of this site is, how much of that actual building you're using for sort of public facing versus back office versus multiple. But that'll all get sort of taken into account as you sort of come forward to the business case about these are the best type of activities. This is the sort of the operating model that we can foresee, and what's that base running cost of a building like Bow Manor that you need to work towards meeting. Because like I say, it is what it is. You can't get away from it. It's a Victorian building, and we're going to have to keep investing in it for however long we own it.
Mrs. Knight.
Thank you. Great report. You've had a process of engaging with many people and an event. At what cost has that cost us to get this information back? And my second question is, you've been asking people who have little knowledge and not in the hospitality and have no idea about weddings, running and keeping a historic building in place like the National Trust. We aren't hospitality, we're a council. And I agree with Mr. King and Mr. Smith. It's a thorn in our side. We just need to let it go and let somebody do some good who is skilled in it. I mean, I did write to you, Richard, the other year, because I had actually been round to Bow Manor on a visit, and it was pitiful, absolutely pitiful. And we're not doing it justice. Just please let somebody who knows what they're doing with historic buildings take it over, and let's just call it quits. That's all I need to say.
I think to pick up the cost of the engagement, that was all done by by the core teams within the council. So the council has a team that does engagement as part of either statutory consultation or general engagement with the public. So that process was led by them. So it was all within kind of core costs within the service. In terms of the specialist knowledge, you're absolutely right that the overall engagement questionnaire was aimed at a very broad demographic. It was aimed at the public in general. Having said that, that was then supplemented by specific questions to business and specific engagement with business. So it wasn't just a passive waiting for business to come to us. We went out to hospitality businesses. We went out to businesses working in exactly the same market as Bow Manor. So there's an awful lot of input from specialists within the sector within the engagement activity that was done there, as well as allowing all of the public to have their say.
Yeah, I think the residents of Woodhouses would take issue with your comments there, and it does actually say in paragraph 48 that 19 businesses attended, including business backgrounds, including wedding venues, campsites, marketeers, theatre companies, MOD, and Chamber of Commerce. So the consultation was done with local people, but also with people that have expertise in running this. So, I think the residents of Woodhouse, they're very passionate. They're my residents. That's the area I represent. They're very passionate about Bow Manor Hall and what it brings to the local area. So I take everyone's opinion on board, but I don't think that's what happened at the engagement event. Mr. Fowler, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a difficult one, this, because obviously the numbers look pretty stark. I mean, truthfully, as lead member for resources, when you see something on a balance sheet that is a significant outlier, it is worrying. But I think personally, it's worth. I think we owe it to not just the people around Bow Manor. I mean, I really enjoyed going out and speaking to residents about it. I think it was really insightful to get an idea of what it meant to people, especially that live nearby, and their perspective on things. But I think we owe it to the county as well to make sure that the fate of Bow Manor Hall doesn't fall into uncharted territory. My concern with giving it away to the private sector is that with the repairs that need to be made on Bow Manor Hall itself, with the chimneys and things like that, there's a question about the viability of it and what sort of commercial deal we'd actually be able to reach with somebody in order for them to take that on. That would be my concern with it. And secondly, I would say that there is actually a positive outlook when it comes to the engagement that we've done and the early business case. Obviously, there's a lot of work to go, but we've heard some really good things and some good ideas from people, and I think they're worth pursuing personally. I take that it is currently a financial burden, but if things are done right, and I've fully, backed the team here, and I've seen some of the early indications that say, there are options we can look at. I think it's worth carrying on. That's my perspective, and just to give a bit of clarity. But yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Poland.
Thank you very much. My questions are around Bow Manor Hall as well. Forgive me if it's in the report. I haven't seen it. Do we know the annual visitor numbers for Bow Manor Hall? And is it possible to sort of determine how many of those are from Leicestershire and otherwise? Because obviously 638k is a huge amount of money. And if you then just sort of divide that between the number of visitors coming, what is it that we are paying per visitor effectively? It's a wonderful thing. I've spoken at length about this over periods of years in this room and many others, and it's something that I would dearly love to keep. I'm one of those people that Mr. King talked about that has childhood memories of the place. It was great experience, and it would be brilliant if we could keep it. But the amount of money it's costing the taxpayer of Leicestershire has to be balanced against whether those 2 or 3 days I was there in 1990 is worth it. Do you see what I mean? So you sort of go with the best will in the world, with the in the context of our overall budget. So how much are we paying? I guess that's the first question. How much are we paying per visitors, and are the where are those visitors coming from? If I lived in Woodhouse, I would also probably think it's the greatest thing and it's brilliant, and it is brilliant. But if you're living in Woodhouse, it's next door to you. If you're living in maybe Mr. King's area, or do you know what I mean? The other side of Hinckley, whether you do use it quite to the same extent. And again, we are obliged here to sort of think on a Leicestershire-wide basis. And the second question, last question, I guess, is for Richard. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and I apologize for this. Do you believe that Bow Manor Hall will ever make a profit, or at least be able to wash its face on a consistent, ongoing basis? Or is your view that we will always have to subsidise it, but maybe not to the extent that we currently are?
In terms of the number of visitors, that is a really difficult figure to get, and that's not sort of me wanting to obfuscate there. But it's straightforward to say the number of visitors use the outdoor education centre, and I can show and we can have that mapped across the county area, and I can show you it is genuinely children from right across Leicestershire, across probably everyone's division represented today who use Bow Manor. Use of the hall for weddings and conferences, that's the number that's a lot harder to get. So I don't have kind of a simple stat of this is how many people have used it. Use of the outdoor education centre, I think we quoted a number of about 26,000 children using that centre. It is substantially, it is right from across Leicestershire, Leicester City, and slightly further afield, but a lot of children from within the county will be using it. In terms of the kind of the broader picture, I think if Bow Manor continues as it is, then I don't see there's a realistic prospect of it generating a profit. That much is clear. That's the whole point of doing this exercise. And I think what the engagement activity has taught me, and particularly the interaction we've had with industry experts, is that the site needs to become much more honed in what it does. And the site has grown over time to offer a great array of services in a way that's truly wonderful for children who come to the site. The things they experience there is fantastic. But actually, to turn it into a site that is profitable will involve us needing to refine what we offer and how we offer it and how we operate it. And I think that some of the elements that have come out of this that we've got within some of the shortlisted ideas, not all of which we will take forward, but all of which we're working up, will allow us to bring that kind of clarity to it that probably will, some areas we're going to have to change how we deliver things in order to make them more profitable. Other areas will be bringing through new areas of business. There might be some other areas where we go, actually, that thing's fantastic, but actually it's proving a bit of a drag on the site as a whole. So I do think kind of there will need to be change. That much is clear. And I think, everybody who's engaged with the process has agreed with that we do need to do things differently, be it the public, be it businesses, be it the staff team at Bow Manor acknowledge that we'll need to do things differently. So I do think there's a way through this, and I'm really excited by some of the opportunities from it. It will require investment. We all acknowledge that, but I think with the right plan, we can get to that point. But continuing as we are, we're not going to get there.
And I have asked Declan as well because I can't get exact figures about how much Bow Manor made and how much Bow Manor lost per year. So I have asked Declan for those figures for the last 3 years, because it's all spread across all different budget lines and it's really difficult. I can't find it. So maybe that would be worth sending out to all of the Scrutiny Commission with this is how much Bow Manor made, this is how much it costs, on a really simple spreadsheet. So I have asked for that because I don't think it's clear to many of us. Mr. Innes, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm excited by your enthusiasm, Richard. Thanks for that. It's I think we need to put enthusiasm into these old traditional Victorian or older buildings that we have in Leicestershire. It's all too easy to say we've got to get rid or whatever. That's certainly not in my psyche at all. But I do have sympathies for what you guys are saying. There may be a hybrid situation here that we could actually, Leicestershire County Council retain some sort of overseeing ownership or whatever, and we invite public input, private sector input into supporting that. So I think what's key is, when are we going to see this business plan? What's the timescale for that? Because every day or every month that goes by, I guess the concern that we have in here is not about the building, it's not about the history, it's about the drain on resources. So the sooner we can get some visibility on how we might see a way forward and we can input into that, I think we could, or I would hope, keep a great asset for the county, but also make it something that more people, 26,000 children have been, did you say, in a year? That's fantastic. And can we make it other people visit, a real visitor attraction? So, you know, let's get that business plan written up. Let's look at it and let's move forward positively.
That was one of my questions, is timescales for this. Do you have any timescales of when we're going to get some feedback from your shortlist that you've obviously done already?
I was going to defer to Richard on that in terms of going timescales in the wider picture. The one thing I'd like to say is, when you mentioned with the hybrid model, I agree. I think there is potential scope for that. Obviously, we're in the early stages of being able to exactly work out which business case is, most attractive. The one thing to give kind of members a bit of insight from myself, when looking at a high level, one of the proposed schemes, and I think this is in the report as well, is kind of like using the wider site just to the aft of the hall. There's where the courtyard is. I think there's potential scope for potentially like a almost boutique shopping village type thing there. I'm sure that is mentioned, and it was spoken about briefly in engagement, and that would kind of open avenues for that public-private partnership, because you'd have it being an LCC site, but potentially us having separate tenants there, people being able to go and spend money in various different places, different types of businesses. And we've seen there's a precedent for that. There are places like, this might even be your ward of division, Mr. King, the one towards Stoughton. I don't know if Stoughton goes as far as yours, but there's one up there. There's sort of a similar village near the airfield. And there's other sites around, not just Leicestershire, but around the East Midlands where that's possible. And then as well, on top of that, with weddings, because that's a big thing, it says in the report that over half of wedding providers in the county actually provide accommodation on site. The difficulty with Bow Manor Hall, obviously, is, we looked into the costs of how much it would actually cost to incorporate accommodation within the hall itself. With it being an old building, that is really difficult, and the viability of that wasn't so great. But when it comes to the wider site, there is avenues for us to be able to construct our own accommodation outside of the main hall, which could improve the viability of weddings and make it more of a bespoke product. So, as I say, these are all really high-level proposals, but there are some really good early indications, and I thought it's good to give members a bit of clarity on some of the direction there. But perhaps Richard can speak to the question about the timescales.
So in terms of timescale, it's worth saying kind of we've done more work than simply the engagement and just a list here. So we've done some initial, we've done a fair amount of business modelling of the proposals that are listed here. The work at the moment that's ongoing is we're doing some more due diligence work. So working with some specialists in some of these areas to go, actually, are the ballpark figures that we've got from the conversation we have in industry, are those reasonable? Are those realistic? So that work's being done at the moment, and that will then feed into the decision-making process going up through the council. So I would expect that we'll be seeing these plans coming out within the next quarter, that there'll be something that's developed that we'll be able to share with the numbers behind it.
Thank you. And I was at Woodhouse Parish Council on Monday, which you've been to, Mr. Fowler. Thank you very much. And they are desperate to hear some more news. So I'd welcome you back at any point, Mr. Fowler, when you've got something to bring them. They're very keen to hear. Obviously a lot of those residents fed into this consultation, and they're very keen to have some feedback. So they're asking me, and I haven't got anything to give them. So they're obviously aware of this meeting this morning. So hopefully that's given them some reassurance that they have got a time frame that they will hear something back. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in agreement with pretty much every opinion in this room. We've all got something to add to this. You know, it's a beautiful historic building, and not for 1 minute thinking that, you know, we should get rid of it and offset and this, that, and the other. But, you know, we're not in a financial position where we can throw money at this. If we had, you know, millions of pounds surplus and we could keep this going and we had all these opportunities, fantastic. We could turn this into something amazingly. And I share Mr. Vince's view. You know, we should be looking for opportunities. I see that, but we're not. We're councillors. We're members of this council, and we have to look at this totally dispassionately, and we have to look at the black and white figures. Now, I understand exactly what Mr. Fowler says, where potentially we could make this more money, but this is not an asset that is going to get cheaper to run as it gets older. This is an asset that is going to deteriorate year upon year and is going to take more and more money. So just like when we talk about the school food, when you've seen the decrease over time, the cost of this building is going to go up and up over time. So the profit you're going to have to make to wash its own face is going to be more and more each year. Now, I'm a capitalist. I'm also an entrepreneur. I see opportunity in everything, and I share your views. There is so much opportunity that can be done with this building. But it's not for this council to do it. We need to be looking at partnerships. We need to be looking at offsetting this to the private sector. Even if we were to give it on a lease for 100 years, free of charge, it wouldn't cost this council any money, but it would retain the building for years to come for people to enjoy, and give these other businesses in the area, provide employment, and turn it into something special that the community can enjoy long after we're gone.
I think there was a question there. Mr. Piper.
Thank you very much, Chair. I must admit, I'm getting just a little bit confused. When I read the report, it was talking about the possibility of offering accommodation for weddings, etc. I think it was Mr. Fowler's just said that this is not ideal because the building isn't designed for bedrooms. But on the website, it actually talks about affordable accommodation for your guests. So according to the website, we already do offer accommodation for weddings and a cheaper rate for midweek hotels. I'm a little bit confused there. Now, going back onto another point, if I may, on the similar tact, Mr. Fowler mentioned a place at Stoughton. Now, there is another place in your division, which is a similar building, which is a very successful hotel and restaurant, Kilworth Hall, or Kilworth House. And I think that what we're seeing is that, yes, it is possible. It is a good building. It has great potential. And you know, if you went along down the road of Stanford Hall, which I believe also in your, where they have other things going on in the grounds as well as, that there is a possibility. I tend to agree also that we're a council, we're not hoteliers. And we're not in the hospitality, most of us are not in the hospitality trade as individuals. We don't have that expertise. So it's possible. Are we the best people? And I tend to think that maybe the best thing to do is to maybe franchise out the hotel rooms if they are available, and the website suggests they are. Maybe franchise out the restaurant and make it as a go-to restaurant as well as a hotel, and things like that, and get my apologies, Mr. Hunt, if I'm disrespecting yourself and your skills. I don't know you, and I don't know if you have the skills in hospitality that I'm talking about, and if so, I apologise. But I think we could do a lot with this, but not directly. Again, I'm not sure if there's a question in that either.
I will just clarify the accommodation question. Simply, I'm not quite sure on the website where it does talk about accommodation, and I'll have a look into that. The site does have accommodation. It has lots and lots of different types of accommodation that are offered to school groups, and sometimes we can extend that to wedding parties in the broadest sense should they wish to use it. Clearly that's not what a wedding couple would want to have as wedding accommodation, and it's that specifically that we've been exploring, as would be common to a number of wedding venues. As Mr. Fowler said, the challenge there is about putting it within the main hall is very expensive from an overheads point of view. And so what some of the work we're doing at the moment is assessing whether it's possible to include that higher quality of accommodation elsewhere within the grounds of the site, so that we can offer what the competition would offer routinely, but in a way that's manageable. And that's the key thing, which within the main hall is unlikely to be.
Thank you. I think we've got tin huts, haven't we, for accommodation? I'm not sure a newlywed couple would like to spend the night in a tin hut. Mr.
Excuse
King.
me, is that in Hinkley?
Mr. King.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, I haven't heard anything so far that I disagree with much, but I think the business case, the business plan is crucial, and we do need a tight timeline. What's concerning me is we're a year along since this engagement process was started. We've had reports to this commission previously where we went into splitting the site and giving over part of it or looking at different options, and they were deemed to be unviable and unworkable. So I really do think, I'm not suggesting actually sell the freehold. I think a long lease into them, there would be operators in the marketplace. I mean, at the end of the day, it's historic. We're in a historic, for reasons of all sorts of things, behaviors, historic reasons. We've got this building, we've got this asset, but do we actually now need it? The thing is, the marketplace has changed. Originally, this was, kids went there when they were various ages at school, and they would go there, and they would, which was a residential weekend or whatever it was. Great. But do we really want to be still in that marketplace? It is a very regulated marketplace, highly costly now, and expectations and demands have vastly increased. There are commercial operators, and even they found this difficult. I know this from a previous report that we had here before. So I come back to the central thing is, and it's exactly what Mr. Piper said, we're not hoteliers, but we're not also children's residential weekend providers. That is not our core activity. We're roads, we're adult social care, we're children's services. And I suppose you could argue that, but the complication is the wedding business, and wedding expectations are so high now with what people expect, what they demand, is vastly different. You cannot deliver that in a building that needs gazillion spending on it, or it certainly needs a lot to bring it up to the standards that most people in that market would expect nowadays. And you mentioned a couple of places, but the difference with all of those is they're not owned by local authorities, they're all owned by the private sector. And that is why, and I just reiterate that point, that we really need to move this on, rather than, you talk about value for money. We've just blown another nearly 700,000 on this in the last year, and how much more we're going to keep blowing on it. I mean, this is the point. So on the other hand, you're talking redesigning services and efficiencies elsewhere, so we can burn money on Bow Manor Hall. I mean, to me, that doesn't make sense. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's everyone who's wanted to speak. Obviously, I declared an interest. It's very dear to me because it's in my division. So obviously, I'm going to stick up. And just coming back to the residents around the area and the parish council, the initiative about the Friends of Bow Manor that they offered to you, a working group, Friends of Bow Manor, to really support you doing this. They're very keen to get involved. So if you could take that on board and maybe work and create a group that you work with the Friends of Bow Manor, would be helpful, I think, for everyone. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for coming. And we're just asked to note the report, but just take away that we're desperate for a business case to come forward. Sorry, second point. Is this going to come back here, or is this going to move now? Because this Bow Manor Hall sits under adults and cultural service. Do we know whether it's going to come back here, or are you going to go to adults now, so it won't come here?
Because of Bow Manor moving over to the Adults and Culture Department, the proposal is that it will go to the relevant scrutiny committee for Adults and Culture. And I think what we've been exploring with colleagues in Democratic Services is where there's some kind of linkage across, so that some of the knowledge and experience from this committee can be shared initially with that committee, in maybe the sort of the first time it comes or something like that, to give that continuity of scrutiny.
I think that would be useful, otherwise you're going to lose everything that you've had already.
For the record as well, I've been speaking with Kevin, who's obviously the lead member for that portfolio. I'll be staying involved in it. I'm quite passionate about it, so it's something I don't want to let go. So yeah, I'll be here. You won't have to miss me.
And I think even if the invite is just for the scrutiny commissioners, the full scrutiny commissioners, I think, you know, they can feed through their own commissioners then to attend that meeting and actually sit and be involved in that meeting. I think would be useful for continuity. All right, thank you very much. Okay. Sorry, Mrs. Knight.
Just a quick one. I'm chair on adults and communities, and a few of the other members sit on it. We did ask for a formal handover of the items that are coming under our belt now, so we will be getting a full handover for the items that are coming under adults and communities now.
Thank you. Okay, we now move to item 14, the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report 2025-2026. So the annual report is backward looking and outlines the keen work undertaken over the last 12 months by the Commission and the 5 other standing Overview and Scrutiny Commissions. You can go now. Thank you, Mr. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
The Commissioners and Chairs and Spokes of all the Scrutiny Commissions have commented on the report now attached, and as usual, the report will be submitted to the next full council meeting in July. So I take it that we're just going to agree the report soon. We will have an opportunity to feed into it. Thank you. So the date of the next meeting is scheduled to take place on the 2nd of September 2026. And item 16, as previously stated, there's no urgent items. Therefore, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for everyone's time today.